He refused every woman in the county, until she said, "You want a wife or just a winter alone?" The gunshot echoed across the valley before anyone saw where it came from. Jack Miller threw himself off his horse and rolled behind a boulder, his rifle already in his hands. 3 more shots cracked through the air, splitting bark off the pine tree above his head. He counted the seconds between shots. 2 men, maybe 3. They were shooting from the ridge to his east, trying to pin him down while someone circled around. This was about the cattle he had driven off Harrison's land yesterday. The man had been grazing his herd on Jack's water rights for 2 months, and Jack had finally had enough. He should have known Harrison would send his boys after him. The problem was, Jack was alone out here, and they knew it. He fired twice at the muzzle flash on the ridge, then sprinted 20 yards to a fallen log. A bullet whined past his ear close enough that he felt the heat. 4 shooters, not 3. This was worse than he thought. Jack checked his ammunition. 18 rounds left. Not good. The shooting stopped. Jack waited, barely breathing, listening for the sound of boots on stone or the creak of leather. Nothing but wind through the pines. They were moving into position. He was a dead man if he stayed here, and he knew it. Then he heard hoofbeats coming fast from the south. A rider was approaching at full gallop, heading straight into the ambush. Jack swore under his breath. Some fool was about to ride right into a killing field. He raised his head to shout a warning and nearly got it shot off for his trouble. The rider came over the rise, and Jack's jaw dropped. It was a woman on a gray mare, riding like the devil himself was chasing her. She had a rifle across her saddle and long dark hair streaming behind her. Before Jack could process what he was seeing, she opened fire on the ridge, shooting as fast as she could work the lever of her Winchester. The men on the ridge scattered. One of them cried out and went down. The woman rode straight at Jack's position, still firing. She slid her horse to a stop beside his log and dropped down next to him, breathing hard. Her name was Claire Morgan, and Jack had met her exactly once 3 weeks ago at the general store in town. She had been buying supplies for her father's ranch on the other side of the county. He remembered her because she had looked him dead in the eye when he held the door for her and said thank you like she meant it. Most people in town avoided looking at him directly. They called him the Hermit of Miller's Peak, and they were not wrong. Now she was here saving his life, and he had no idea why. Part 2, Claire ejected an empty shell casing and loaded a fresh round into her Winchester. Her hands were steady, Jack noticed. No trembling, no panic. She had done this before. "How did you know I was here?" Jack asked. "I saw Harrison's men riding out this morning with their rifles. I know how that man thinks." Claire fired 2 shots at movement on the ridge. "Figured you might need help." He figured right. Jack shifted position and took aim at a shadow moving between the trees. "Why would you risk your neck for me?" Claire did not answer right away. She was scanning the hillside, her dark eyes sharp and focused. "Because Harrison thinks he owns this whole valley, and somebody needs to stand up to him." She glanced at Jack. "Plus, I heard you were stubborn enough to do it alone." Figured that kind of stubborn deserved a fighting chance. A bullet struck the log 6 inches from Jack's head, showering him with splinters. He returned fire, and someone up on the ridge yelled in pain. That was 2 down, maybe. "We cannot stay here," Claire said. "They will work around behind us eventually." "I know." Jack looked back toward where he had left his horse. The animal was long gone, spooked by the gunfire. "Your mare carrying double?" "She will have to." Claire whistled sharp and high, and the gray horse trotted over, completely unfazed by the bullets flying overhead. "Good girl, Ruby." Claire stroked the mare's neck. "She has been through worse than this." Jack wanted to ask what kind of life this woman had led, that her horse was used to gunfights, but there was no time. He grabbed the saddle horn and swung up behind Claire. She kicked Ruby into motion before he was fully seated, and they were racing down the slope with bullets chasing them. They rode hard for 20 minutes, following a creek bed that wound through a narrow canyon. Jack kept expecting to hear hoofbeats behind them, but Harrison's men did not follow. Maybe they had decided it was not worth dying over some disputed grazing rights, or maybe they were just regrouping. Claire finally slowed Ruby to a walk when they reached a stand of cottonwoods near a bend in the creek. She dismounted and led the horse to water. Jack climbed down, his legs stiff from the hard ride. "Thank you," he said. "You saved my life back there." Claire shrugged. "You would have done the same for me." Jack was not so sure about that. He had spent the last 5 years avoiding people as much as possible, keeping to himself up on his mountain ranch. He had his reasons. Good reasons. But looking at Claire now, standing in the dappled sunlight under the cottonwoods, he felt something shift inside him, something he had thought was dead and buried. "Your father's going to be worried," Jack said. "You should head home." "My father died last winter?" Claire said it matter-of-factly, without emotion. "I run the ranch myself now. I am sorry." I did not know. Most people do not. Claire checked Ruby's hooves for stones. I keep to myself mostly, like you. Jack studied her more carefully now. She was younger than he had first thought, maybe 25 or 26. Her clothes were worn but well mended. Her boots were good quality but old. She was working that ranch alone, and it showed in the lean strength of her arms, the calluses on her hands. Harrison been giving you trouble too? Jack asked. He made me an offer on my land last month. Said it was generous. Said I should take it while I still could. Claire straightened up, and there was steel in her voice. I told him where he could put his offer. Jack almost smiled. That would explain why she had been so quick to come to his aid. They had a common enemy. They stood there in silence for a moment, listening to the creek babble over stones. Ruby drank deeply, then raised her head and snorted. You live far from here? Jack asked. About 2 hours north. The Morgan place. You know it. I have seen it from the high country. Good land. It was good land when my father had help working it. Now it is just me and a lot of work I cannot get done alone. Claire looked at him directly, and Jack felt the weight of that gaze. What about you? I hear you have a nice spread up on Miller's Peak. Must get lonely up there by yourself. Jack did not answer. Lonely was not the right word for what his life had become. Empty was closer, but he had chosen it, and he had his reasons. Winter is coming, Claire said. You plan to spend it alone up there? I have before. That was not really an answer, and they both know it. Claire walked over to her saddlebags and pulled out some dried meat and hardtack. She offered half to Jack, and they ate standing up, not talking, just listening to the sounds of the forest. Harrison is not going to stop, Claire said finally. You know that, right? He wants your water rights, and he wants my land. He will keep pushing until one of us breaks or until somebody dies. I am not planning to die, Jack said. Good. Neither am I. Claire wiped her hands on her pants. But we might stand a better chance if we did not face him alone. Jack understood what she was suggesting. An alliance. Maybe more than that, depending on how far she was willing to take it. It made practical sense. 2 ranches working together would be stronger than either one alone. They could watch each other's backs, share resources, survive the winter. But Jack had sworn off that kind of entanglement 5 years ago. He had promised himself never again. The last time he had let someone get close, it had ended in blood and grief and a grave up on the hillside behind his cabin. I work better alone, Jack said. Claire nodded slowly, like she had expected that answer. Sure. Most stubborn men do. She gathered up Ruby's reins and prepared to mount. Good luck with Harrison. Hope you make it through the winter. She was halfway into the saddle when Jack spoke again. Wait. Part 3, Claire paused with one foot in the stirrup and looked back at him. Jack struggled to find the right words. He was not good at this. Had not been good at it even before he became a hermit. You ranch, Jack said. How bad is it really? Claire settled back down onto solid ground. She studied him for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust him with the truth. Bad enough that I am about to lose it. I have maybe 6 weeks before the bank comes calling. I cannot make the mortgage payment my father missed before he died, and I cannot make the next one either.
Not alone. What do you need?
About 100 head of cattle driven to market in Denver before the snow flies. Fences mended on the north pasture. The barn roof patched. Hay put up for winter. Firewood cut and stacked. Claire ticked items off on her fingers. Outcome should I keep going? How much would the cattle bring? Enough to keep the bank happy for another year. Maybe 2 if I am careful. Jack did some quick calculations in his head. 6 weeks was tight, but doable if the weather held. And if Harrison did not interfere. That was the real problem. I could help you with that, Jack said slowly, in exchange for some help with my own place. I have been meaning to expand my herd, but I need better grazing land. Your north pasture would be perfect if you would be willing to lease it. Claire's eyes narrowed. That is a generous offer. What is the real reason? Jack took a breath. Because you are right. Harrison is not going to stop. And because winter up on that mountain really is too lonely to face alone again. The words hung in the air between them. Claire's expression softened slightly, and Jack saw something in her eyes that might have been understanding, or maybe recognition. Like she knew exactly what kind of lonely he was talking about. What are you proposing exactly? Claire asked. A business arrangement? To start with, yes. And if it becomes more than that, then we deal with it when it happens. Jack met her gaze steadily. But I am not going to lie to you. I am not easy to live with. I have been alone a long time, and I like it that way most days. I am not looking for romance or companionship or whatever it is people go looking for when they get married. Claire actually smiled at that, a quick flash of amusement that transformed her face. Who said anything about marriage? I am talking about surviving the winter and keeping my ranch. Anything else is getting way ahead of ourselves. Fair enough, Jack said. So we have a deal? Not yet. Claire crossed her arms. First, I need to know why you really live up there alone. Everyone in town has a theory, but nobody knows for sure. If I am going to trust you with my livelihood, I need to know what I'm getting into. Jack felt his jaw tighten. That was the question he had been dreading, the one he never answered. But Claire had put her life on the line for him today, and she deserved the truth. I had a wife, Jack said quietly. Her name was Mary. We had a small ranch together not far from here. Different valley, but same country. 5 years ago, a group of raiders came through. They were hitting homesteads all along the territory, stealing what they could, burning the rest. She just waited. I was out checking the far pasture when they came, Jack continued. Mary was home alone. By the time I saw the smoke and got back, it was too late. They had taken everything and left her for dead. She lived for 3 days, long enough to tell me she loved me and to make me promise I would not spend my life hunting them down for revenge. I am sorry, Claire said softly. I kept the promise. Barely. Sold that ranch, bought the place up on Miller's Peak, and stayed away from people. Figured if I did not let anyone close, I would not have to watch them die. That is a hard way to live. It is the only way I know anymore. Jack looked up at the sky, watching clouds drift across the blue. So now you know. Still want to make that deal? Claire was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. My father died in his sleep. Heart just gave out one night. I found him in the morning peaceful as could be. And you know what I learned? People die whether you love them or not. Whether you keep them close or push them away. The only difference is whether you have good memories to hold on to after they are gone. Jack felt something crack open inside his chest. Something he had kept locked away for 5 years. I will make you a counteroffer, Claire said. We work together to save both our ranches. We watch each other's backs against Harrison. We survive the winter. And when spring comes, we see where we stand. No promises, no obligations. Just two people trying to make it through to the other side. And if I cannot do it, if I cannot let someone close again, then you will spend another winter alone on that mountain, and I will lose my ranch to the bank, and Harrison will win. Claire stepped closer. Close enough that Jack could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. But I do not think you rode down here just to check your cattle. I think you were looking for a reason to come back to the living. Maybe you did not know it yet, but I think that is what you were doing. Jack wanted to argue, but he could not. Because she was right. He had been slowly dying up on that mountain, one lonely day at a time, and some part of him knew it. We try it your way, but I am warning you now, I am going to disappoint you. Probably, Claire agreed. And I will probably drive you crazy with how stubborn I am. But at least we will not be bored. She stuck out her hand and Jack shook it. Her grip was firm and calloused, the handshake of someone who knew hard work and was not afraid of it. They mounted Ruby together and headed toward Claire's ranch. The sun was getting low in the sky, painting the hills gold and purple. Jack tried to remember the last time he had watched a sunset with another person. It had been with Mary, the night before she died. This is not the same, Jack told himself. This is just a business arrangement, two people helping each other survive. Nothing more. But even as he thought it, he knew he was lying to himself. Because somewhere between that gunfight and this moment, something had changed. Some door he thought was permanently sealed had cracked open just a little bit, and he was not sure whether to be terrified or relieved. They rode in silence for a while, following a trail that wound through stands of aspen and pine. The air was cooling as evening approached, carrying the scent of sage and distant snow. Winter was coming, just like Claire had said, and for the first time in 5 years, Jack was not going to face it alone. He just hoped he remembered how to let someone in, before it was too late for both of them. Part 4. The Morgan Ranch looked worse than Jack had expected. The barn roof sagged in 2 places, the corral fence had gaps a cow could walk through, and the main house needed paint so badly the wood was starting to rot. But the land itself was good. Rich grass in the valley, plenty of water, timber on the slopes. With work, this place could thrive again. Claire dismounted and led Ruby to the barn. Jack followed, taking in the details. A few chickens scratched in the yard, A thin cat watched them from the porch. Everything spoke of one person stretched too thin, trying to hold together something meant for 3 or 4 hands. Inside the barn, 2 horses and a milk cow occupied stalls. The hay supply looked dangerously low. Jack made mental calculations. They would need to cut hay immediately if these animals were going to make it through winter. "I know what you are thinking," Claire said as she unsaddled Ruby. "It looks bad because it is bad. My father let things slide the last year before he died. His heart was failing, and he did not have the strength. I have been trying to catch up ever since, but there are only so many hours in a day. Where are your cattle?" "A podcast, about a mile from here. I have been keeping them close so I can check on them daily." Claire hung the saddle on a rack and started brushing Ruby down. "About 120 head, give or take. Mix of longhorns and crosses. They are range cattle, tough as nails, but they need to get to market soon. Prices drop after the first snow." Jack did the math. 120 head would bring good money in Denver if they could get them there in time, but it was a hard drive, especially this late in the season. They would need to move fast. "How soon can you be ready to drive them?" 3 days if you help me round them up." Claire looked at him over Ruby's back. "But that is not our biggest problem. To get to Denver, we have to cross Harrison's land. He controls the only good pass through the mountains. Any other route adds 2 weeks to the drive, and we do not have 2 weeks. So we asked permission." Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Harrison does not give permission. He charges a toll. Last year, he wanted 20% of the herd. This year, it will probably be more, since he knows I am desperate. Then we find another way. There is no other way. Not unless you want to drive cattle straight up a mountain face." Jack walked to the barn door and looked out at the darkening hills. Somewhere out there was a solution. There had to be. He had not survived 5 years alone by giving up when things got hard. "What if we do not take the cattle to Denver?" Jack said. "What if we take them north instead? Montana has buyers. The mining camps always need beef. That is even farther. We would never make it before snow. Not if we go the long way around. But there is a shortcut through the high country. An old Shoshone trail my father showed me years ago. It cuts 3 days off the trip to the Montana border." Claire set down the brush and came to stand beside him. "How old were you when your father showed you this trail?" 12. "And you think you can still find it?" Jack nodded. "I have been up there hunting. I know the way. Is it safe for cattle?" "Nothing about this is safe," Claire said, but she was smiling slightly, and Jack could see her mind working through the possibilities. "If we could get the herd to Montana, avoid Harrison entirely, we might actually pull this off. We would need supplies, food for 2 weeks, maybe 3. Warm gear because it gets cold up high, extra horses in case we lose any. I have some of that. The rest we can buy in town tomorrow." Claire turned to face him fully. "Are you sure about this, Jack? Because once we start, there is no turning back. If we get caught in a storm up in those mountains, we are dead. The cattle are dead. Everything is lost." "I am sure," Jack said, and he was surprised to find that he meant it. For the first time in years, he felt something like purpose stirring in his chest. This was worth doing, worth risking for. They spent the evening planning. Claire had maps of the territory, and Jack marked out the route he remembered. They would drive the herd north through the foothills, then up into the high country where the old trail ran. If they pushed hard, they could make the Montana border in 12 days. Sell the cattle in one of the mining camps, and be back before the heavy snows hit. It was a gamble. But it was the only play they had. That night, Jack slept in the barn. Claire offered him the spare room in the house, but he was not ready for that yet. Too much too soon. The barn was comfortable enough, and it gave him space to think. He lay in the hayloft listening to the horses shift in their stalls below. Through the open loft door, he could see stars scattered across a black sky. The same stars Mary had loved. She used to make him come outside on clear nights just to look at them. Said they made her feel small and important at the same time. Jack had never understood what she meant back then. Now he thought maybe he did. In the house, a lamp still burned in what he guessed was Claire's room. He wondered what she was thinking. Whether she was having second thoughts about trusting a near stranger with her future. Whether she was scared. He would not blame her if she was. He was scared himself. The next morning they rode to town together. It was a risk being seen together, but they needed supplies and there was no way around it. The general store owner, a man named Pete Carson, raised his eyebrows when they walked in together, but had the good sense not to ask questions. Jack bought ammunition, dried beans, coffee, and salt. Claire added flour, sugar, and medical supplies. Pete totaled it up and gave them a fair price. As they were loading the supplies onto their horses, Sheriff Tom Bradley walked over. "Heard there was some shooting up near Miller's Creek yesterday. the sheriff said. He was a solid man, honest as far as Jack knew, but he was also careful not to cross Harrison unless he had to. You two know anything about that? Just some hunters, Jack said. Got a little too close for comfort. Hunters, the sheriff repeated. He did not believe it, but he let it go. You folks staying out of trouble, I hope? Always do, Sheriff, Claire said sweetly. Bradley looked like he wanted to say more, but another man was approaching. Jack recognized him immediately. Carl Harrison, the man himself. Harrison was in his 50s, well-dressed, with cold blue eyes and a smile that never reached them. He owned the biggest ranch in the valley and half the businesses in town. He was rich, powerful, and used to getting what he wanted. Well now, Harrison said, this is interesting. The hermit and the widow did not know you two were acquainted. We have mutual interests, Claire said. I bet you do. Harrison looked at Jack up and down. Heard you had some trouble yesterday, Miller. Some of my boys said they saw you out near the disputed range. Said you were trespassing. That range is mine, Jack said quietly. Water rights going back 20 years? That is debatable. Harrison's smile got colder. But we could settle it in court if you like. I have got a good lawyer. Do you? Jack did not answer. They both knew he could not afford to fight Harrison in court. Or Harrison continued, we could settle this another way. I am a reasonable man. I am willing to buy your water rights. Fair price. Cash money. You could take that and start somewhere else. Somewhere less isolated. Might be better for a man like you. Heard you have been alone up there a long time. That cannot be healthy. Not interested, Jack said. Think about it. Harrison turned to Claire. Same offer goes for you, Miss Morgan. Your ranch is too much for one woman. Sell it to me, take the money, and find yourself an easier life. Maybe even find yourself a husband. Claire's smile was razor sharp. I appreciate the concern, Mr. Harrison, but I am not looking for an easier life. Or a husband. Shame. Harrison tipped his hat. Well, the offer stands for both of you, but it will not stand forever. Come spring, land prices might drop considerably, especially if this winter is as hard as folks are predicting. He walked away, leaving the threat hanging in the air. That went well, Claire said once he was out of earshot. He knows something, Jack said. He knows we are working together, and he does not like it. Good. Let him sweat for a change. They rode back to the Morgan Ranch in silence, both of them thinking about what Harrison had said. The man was powerful, but he was not invincible. And now he had two problems instead of one. That gave them an advantage if they played it right. That night they began gathering the cattle. It was hard work in the dark, but they could not risk doing it in daylight where Harrison's men might see. By dawn, they had most of the herd bunched up and ready to move. Jack sat on his horse watching the sun come up over the mountains. Claire rode up beside him. You ready for this? She asked. No, Jack said honestly, but I am doing it anyway. Claire laughed. That is the spirit. They started the drive north as the sun cleared the peaks. Behind them, everything they owned was at risk. Ahead of them, winter waited in the high country. And somewhere in between, Harrison was planning his next move. But for the first time in 5 years, Jack Miller was not alone. And that made all the difference. Part 5, the first 3 days of the drive went smoothly. Too smoothly, Jack thought. They pushed the cattle north through the foothills, covering good ground, and the weather held clear and cold. The herd moved well, the longhorns setting a steady pace that the crosses followed. At night they took turns on watch, 2 hours on, 4 hours off. Jack found he slept better knowing Claire was out there keeping guard. That fact troubled him more than he wanted to admit. On the 4th morning they found the horse. It was one of Harrison's, identified by the brand on its flank. The animal had been shot and left in the middle of their trail. A message. Harrison knew where they were and where they were going. He is trying to spook us, Claire said. Make us think he is ahead of us. What if he is? Then we deal with it. Claire checked her rifle. We have come too far to turn back now. They rode around the dead horse and kept moving. The cattle were nervous, smelling blood, but Claire and Jack got them settled and pushed on. The mountains loomed closer now, their peaks already white with snow. Jack studied the sky. Clear today, but there were clouds building in the northwest. Storm weather coming their way. By afternoon, they reached the start of the old Shoshone Trail. It was barely visible, just a trace through the rocks where generations of feet had worn the stone smooth. Jack had to trust his memory now, following landmarks his father had shown him 20 years ago. A split pine tree, a rock formation that looked like a sleeping bear, a creek that ran silver over white stones. The trail climbed steadily, rising into country where the air grew thin and cold. The cattle balked at first, not wanting to go higher, but Claire and Jack worked them patiently until they had no choice but to follow. By nightfall, they were well into the mountains, camped in a narrow valley where grass still grew and water pooled in a natural basin. "We made good time," Claire said as they ate dinner around a small fire. "Another 4 days like this, and we reached the Montana border." Jack nodded, but he was uneasy. It felt wrong that Harrison had not made a move yet. The man was not the type to make empty threats. His answer came the next morning. They woke to find 10 of their cattle dead, their throats cut sometime in the night. The work had been done quietly, professionally. Someone had crept past their camp, killed the animals, and disappeared without a sound. Claire stood looking at the dead cattle, her face pale with fury. "He is costing us money. Every head we lose is money we cannot afford to lose." "It is more than that," Jack said. "He is showing us he can reach us any time he wants, that we are not safe even when we think we are. So what do? We set a trap." Jack scanned the surrounding hills. "Harrison's men are following us, probably staying just out of sight. Tonight, we let them think we are asleep, but we will be waiting." That night, they built their fire as usual and laid out their bedrolls in plain sight. Then they moved quietly into the rocks above the camp and waited. Jack took the high ground to the north. Claire positioned herself to the east. They had a clear view of the camp and the herd beyond. Hours passed. The fire burned down to embers. The cattle settled for the night, their breathing a soft chorus in the darkness. Jack was starting to think no one was coming when he saw movement on the far side of the herd. 3 men, creeping through the shadows. They had knives, ready to do to more cattle what they had done the night before. Jack watched them get closer, waiting for the right moment. When they were fully committed, separated from their horses, he whistled once. Sharp and clear. Claire opened fire from her position. Jack fired a second later. The men scattered, one of them crying out as a bullet caught him in the leg. They ran for their horses, but Claire and Jack kept shooting, driving them back. Within minutes, the 3 men were riding hard down the mountain, leaving one of their own behind. The wounded man sat on the ground, holding his leg and cursing. Jack approached carefully, rifle ready. The man was young, maybe 20, and scared. "Who sent you?" Jack asked. "You know who sent us." The man grimaced in pain. "Mr. Harrison. He said to slow you down, cost you enough cattle that the drive would not be worth it. Why does he care so much? Because if you make it to Montana, if you prove there is another route to market, other ranchers will use it. Harrison's toll road will not be worth anything." The young man looked up at Jack. "He has been bleeding people dry for years with those tolls. You are threatening his whole operation." Claire came down from her position, still holding her rifle. "What do we do with him?" The young man looked terrified. "Please. I was just following orders. I did not want to kill your cattle. I need the work." Jack studied him for a long moment. Then he made a decision. "We are going to patch up that leg. Then you are going to ride back to Harrison and tell him something for me. Tell him if he sends any more men after us, they will not be going home. We have got 2 weeks of supplies and 100 rifles worth of ammunition. We will stand our ground. Understand?" The young man nodded quickly. "I understand." They bandaged his leg and sent him on his way. Jack watched him ride down the mountain and disappear into the darkness. "You think he will deliver the message?" Claire asked. "I think so. And I think Harrison will think twice before sending anyone else. He does not want a war. He wants us to give up. Then he is going to be disappointed." They broke camp before dawn and pushed the herd hard the next 2 days. The trail grew steeper, winding through passes so narrow the cattle had to go single file. The air got colder. Snow began to fall, light at first, then heavier. Jack checked the sky constantly, watching the storm build. On the 8th day, they reached the highest point of the trail. From here they could see Montana in the distance, a vast sweep of prairie dotted with settlements and mining camps. They were going to make it. Against all odds, they were actually going to make it. But the storm was not done with them yet. That night it hit with full force, a blizzard that turned the world white and howling. They got the cattle bunched in a sheltered ravine and tied the horses to trees. Then they huddled together under a canvas lean-to, sharing body heat while the storm raged around them. Jack found himself sitting close to Claire, close enough to feel her warmth. She was shivering despite her coat, and without thinking he put his arm around her. She leaned against him, and they sat like that for a long time, not talking, just surviving. "This reminds me of the winter my father died," Claire said quietly. "I sat with him that last night, keeping him warm. He kept apologizing for leaving me alone. I told him it was all right, that I would be fine. I think we both knew I was lying. You have done fine, Jack said. Better than fine. Your father would be proud. I hope so. Claire was quiet for a moment. What about Mary? What would she think of this? Of you helping me? Jack thought about that. Mary had always wanted him to be happy, to live fully. She would not have wanted him to spend 5 years alone on a mountain, slowly turning to stone. She would say, I waited too long, Jack said, that I should have let someone in years ago. It is not too late. Jack looked down at Claire, at her face barely visible in the darkness. Her eyes were closed, but she was not asleep. She was waiting to see what he would do. He could walk away right now. Tell her this was just about saving the ranch, nothing more. Keep that wall up. Keep himself safe. Or he could take a chance. Let himself feel something again. Risk the pain that might come. Mary's voice echoed in his memory. Do not waste your life on grief, Jack. Promise me. Live. He had made that promise, and he had broken it for 5 years. But maybe it was not too late to start keeping it. Jack tilted Claire's face up and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, like he had forgotten how. But Claire kissed him back, and suddenly it was not tentative anymore. It was fierce and hungry and full of all the loneliness they had both been carrying. When they finally pulled apart, Claire was smiling. About time, she said. The storm blew itself out by morning. They drove the cattle down out of the mountains and onto the Montana plains. 3 days later, they reached a mining camp called Silver Creek and sold the entire herd for more than Claire had hoped. The buyer paid in cash, crisp bills that Claire counted twice to make sure it was real. We did it, she said, her eyes bright. Jack, we actually did it. They stayed in Silver Creek for 2 days, resting the horses and buying supplies for the trip home. On the second night, Claire asked Jack the question he had been waiting for. What happens when we get back? Jack had been thinking about that. Harrison is going to be angry. He will try something else. Let him try. Claire's voice was firm. We beat him once, we will beat him again. But that is not what I am asking. I am asking about us. Do you go back to your mountain, and I go back to my ranch? Or do we figure out something different? Jack looked at her across the table in the small hotel dining room. A month ago, he would have said he wanted to be alone, that it was safer, simpler, better. But that was before Claire had charged into a gunfight to save his life, before they had driven cattle through a blizzard together, before he had remembered what it felt like to kiss someone and mean it. I was thinking maybe we combine the ranches, Jack said. Pool our resources, work the land together. Your valley for cattle, my mountain for horses. We would be stronger together than apart. Is that a business proposal or something else? Both, Jack said. I am not good at this, Claire. I have not been with anyone since Mary died. I do not know if I remember how to be a husband, how to let someone all the way in. But I want to try. If you are willing to be patient with me. Claire reached across the table and took his hand. I am not looking for perfect, Jack. I am just looking for real. Can you give me that? Yes, Jack said, and for the first time in 5 years, he believed it. They rode back to the valley together, taking their time, enjoying the journey. When they crossed back into their home territory, they rode straight to Harrison's ranch. The man himself came out to meet them, his face dark with anger. You cost me a lot of money, Harrison said. That Montana route is going to ruin me. No, Claire said. Your greed was going to ruin you. We just sped up the process. This is not over. Yes, it is, Jack said quietly, because next spring, every rancher in this valley is going to know there is another way to market. You can charge fair tolls on your road, or you can watch your business die. Your choice. Harrison glared at them but said nothing. There was nothing he could say. They had beaten him and everyone knew it. Jack and Claire rode away from Harrison's ranch and headed home. They spent the winter working both ranches, combining herds, mending fences, planning for spring. On a cold day in January, they rode into town and got married in the small church with Pete Carson and his wife as witnesses. That night, in the house they now shared, Claire asked Jack if he was happy. Jack thought about it. Happiness was not something he had allowed himself to think about for a long time. But lying there with Claire beside him, the fire crackling in the hearth, the sound of horses in the barn outside, he realized that yes, he was happy. Not the wild joy he had known with Mary, but something quieter, something that felt like it might last. I am, Jack said. Are you? Claire smiled. You refused every woman in the county, and I had to practically threaten you to get you to even consider being with someone. So yes, I am very happy. You did not threaten me. I asked if you wanted a wife or just a winter alone. That is pretty much a threat. Jack laughed. It was the first real laugh Claire had heard from him, and the sound of it filled the room like light. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady, but inside they were warm. And together, and that was enough. Spring came eventually, as it always does. The snow melted, the grass turned green, and new calves were born in the valley. Jack and Claire worked the land side by side, building something that would last. And sometimes, on clear nights, they would stand outside and look at the stars together. Mary would have liked you, Jack said one such night. I wish I could have met her, Claire replied. She would have told you I was stubborn and impossible. She would have been right. Jack pulled Claire close, and they stood there in the starlight, two people who had almost given up finding each other. Two people who had learned that sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them, when you are not even looking. In the valley below, their cattle grazed peacefully. In the barn, their horses slept. And in the house behind them, a fire burned warm and bright, waiting for them to come home, which they did, together, the way they would for all the years to come.